This is Andy Brown, publisher of Conundrum Press, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics Podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics Podcast, dedicated to celebrate Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. On this episode, I chat with Andy Brown about Conundrum Press offerings planned for spring 2026. Please like and subscribe to this website by hitting the subscribe button so be notified about new podcast interviews and article posts. This podcast is available wherever podcasts are enjoyed. Please like, follow, and subscribe. Andy Brown is a founding editor and publisher of Conundrum Press that began in 1996 amidst the political turmoil and cultural vibrancy of Montreal. Andy originally published chapbooks, short stories, novels, comics, and zine collections, but in 2010 he revised the output to exclusively publish literary graphic novels. One of many Conundrum Press books planned for 2026 is 30 by 30. Conundrum Press is turning 30 years old, and with 30 by 30, 30 years of Conundrum Press, an anthology of graphic shorts from 25 Canadian artists. Featuring a preface by Andy Brown on 30 years of publishing activity at Conundrum, 30 by 30 collects all the books in Conundrum 25 Pocketbook series in celebration of the 30th anniversary of this highly acclaimed publishing company. Featuring veteran cartoonists, archival work, and fresh new talents, this anthology expands what a graphic short can be. So, without further ado, here's my chat with Andy Brown about Conundrum Press offerings planned for spring 2026. So, Andy Brown, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Yes, thank you for having me.
I appreciate your time. For this specific chat, I'd like to reflect on what's happened this past year and then ask you about Conundrum Press's plans for spring 2026, if that's all right with you.
Yes, of course.
Cool. Now, both you and I have had a very busy year. Conundrum Press has pretty much been doing all sorts of stuff. Are there any highlights that stand out for you this past year?
Well, yeah, certainly. Lots of highlights. Let's start at the beginning, I guess. So, launch spring titles every year at what's becoming kind of the circuit of TCAF, MCAF, Montreal Comic Art Festival. I try to do an event in Vancouver. Now, VanCAF has been on hiatus. So this year, we did TCAF, MCAF, and the Vancouver Art Book Fair, which I'd never been accepted to. Some art book fairs, it depends who's running it. Some art book fairs do not want comics and zines. So they immediately put me in that category, even though I've published in the past lots of art books and actually, worked with galleries and that sort of thing. However, the people running the show there now, I guess, are I went. It was in the Roundhouse, so the same venue as VanCAF, and it was really, really good. Like, there was a lot of sales. It's now, I would say, third in line after TCAF and MCAF for events in Canada. But yeah, so in Montreal it was raining the whole time, but it was actually, in terms of sales, it was the same this year as it was when it was sunny. So, it's out on the street, for people who don't know, on Saint Denis in Montreal. It's a really great festival. People in Montreal really respond well to bande dessinée and comics and graphic novels. So they're very eager, even though the books are in English, they're very eager to spend money on titles. And I brought Sophia Alarcon with me and Eleanor Hannon with me, who are Nova Scotian artists. So I get a bit of funding from Nova Scotia, thank you very much, to take Nova Scotian artists on tour to these events. So they were in Montreal and Toronto, and that was fabulous, and they did a great job. We launched Rick Tremble's Gesticulating Gentrification, which is about gentrification and housing insecurity in Montreal, and kind of a memoir. Rick Tremble's has been around for like 30, 40 years in the Montreal Underground and punk bands and comics. So we launched that at MCAF. That was a real success, and we sold out of books there. In Vancouver, then the Vancouver Art Book Fair and at TCAF, we launched Katarina Thorson's Salt Green Death. I'm expecting kind of some award nominations for that this year just because it's so unique and beautiful. She's in Vancouver. She was kind of the featured artist at the Vancouver Art Book Fair too, which was great. We did the second book by Don Boyd, Den of Iniquity, which also we launched in Montreal. So that was fantastic. And also TCAP, by the way, moved, as your listeners might know, moved to the former Maple Leaf Gardens ice rink in Toronto. And so it was kind of a refresh on TCAP. And so that went really well. And I think it was a big success. Yeah, so I was happy to be a part of that. So yeah, 2025. And then a couple of the other events that I went to, I did some local maritime events, which was a lot of fun. I love going to the Charlottetown Zine Fair. I love going to Sappy Fest in Sackville, New Brunswick. We had DCAF, it's a Dartmouth Comic Art Festival here just outside Halifax, which was fantastic. So, lots of local things as well. But yeah, I'd been to the Helsinki International Comic Art Festival about 10 years ago, and it was really great. And I think Canada was a featured country, so there was lots of Canadians there. This time I just went as an invitation, so I mostly met up with people from Koos, the publishing company Koos from Latvia, from Riga, and so they were there. David was there, so hung out with them and a bunch of Finnish artists. That was really great, and the whole Baltic community, Scandinavian community, well, mostly the Baltics. So Finland, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania. I learned a lot about the comic scene in these places. And of course, it's all under pressure right now from Russia, including while I was there, Russian jets were in NATO airspace over Estonia. So it was all kind of a bit freaky, but people in Finland are used to this sort of stuff. So Finland is a really, really strong comics scene there. Most of their books are translated into English. They do like bilingual editions. So that was a lot of fun. And, I stayed in touch with some of the people I met there. So that was definitely a highlight. And another book that we did, I want to just get this out there, is we partnered up with a French-Belgian publisher called Freemock, and they did a book by Zoe Jusseret, who's in Vancouver, but she's a Belgian citizen, and she met the owners of Freemock while she was a student in Brussels. So we did a book called About the Little Ones, which is silent, but it was printed in French and English at the same time. So that's, I think, the first time that Freemock has collaborated with an English publisher. So I'm really, really happy to be part of that because they're kind of a legendary avant-garde publisher in Europe. So that's a real nice connection. So basically, yeah, Helsinki, Belgium, trying to get more European connections and less American connections for obvious reasons. Yeah, so that's 2025.
That's pretty exciting. I tell you, you must be worn out.
There's more, but I'm going to stop it there. Yeah,
well,
sure.
Also, the other thing I want to mention is the critical recognition, not just the fact that you publish books, but critical recognition. Wonder if you could talk a wee bit about, Eisner Awards, Doug Wright Awards, that sort of thing.
So Alison McCreish's Degrees of Separation,
right.
Her memoir, which is fantastic, like 400-page beautiful memoir of her 10 years living in the Arctic. She's still up in Yellowknife, but it's, working family stuff in the Arctic. So that was nominated for an Eisner. And Dave Lapp's The Field, which I guess those were released in 2024, was also nominated for an Eisner. It's also a memoir of one childhood summer in the 70s and kids playing. It's a brilliant book. And so that book was also one of the books for the Lynn Ward Prize. It was also nominated for that and for a Doug Wright Award for Best Book. And Blaise Moritz won the Exposine Award for his Conundrum 25 book, Bar Delicious. That was kind of an unexpected and great thing. And this year, actually, also another Conundrum 25 book just won the Exposine Award, which happens in Montreal. And that was Cole Degenstein's It Really Is. Those are a couple of things.
So I want to also talk to you about plans for spring 2026, because I noticed Conundrum Press just issued a release about that. I wonder if you could give us a sneak peek of what readers can expect for this coming spring.
Sure, yeah. Well, 2026 is a big year, so we have a lot of big plans. 2026 is the 30th anniversary of Conundrum Press. Started in 1996 in Montreal, mostly because of the timing was such that it was post-referendum, which was 1995. So 1996, we started publishing chapbooks and zines and stuff, and now 30 years later, we're going to launch, it's called 30 by 30, 30 years of Conundrum Press. At my 20th anniversary, I launched 20 by 20, 20 years of Conundrum Press. So this is 10 years later. It's a bit of a different idea. So at the 25th anniversary, I started a series of pocketbooks, which we called Conundrum 25. And it was 5 books a year, literally pocket size, by 100 pages, 150 pages, 25 different Canadian artists, all the same format. So it's essentially one story, what would be called a graphic short, I guess, although there's no real official name for that, which is partly why I started it. So those 25 books are now all printed, and there's 25 artists involved. Then I put them all in this anthology, which I just sent to the printer. And so we wanted 5 more people involved. So I wrote an introduction. Susie Gardner, who's a short story writer in Vancouver, wrote an introduction. And then Adam D'Souza does the cover, which is amazing. And Adam is known for The Gulf, is his big book that came out a couple years ago. And then Jonathan Dick, who did a book called Shelter Belts for us, which won a whole bunch of awards. He's in Winnipeg. He did the biographical portraits of all the artists, so 25 drawings. And then he is also, at this point in time, designing the box for the box set of all 25 books. We're going to release with the anthology a box sets, which will be designed by Jonathan. So you can get all 25 books in a beautifully designed box, and the anthology, which will be one big book, and all of the stories will be laid out. Instead of in the pocketbooks, they're one panel a page, for example. And so in the anthology, they're comics. So they're 9 panels a page or 6 or however it fit to do the anthology. And it's quite a diverse group of artists, all ages, all styles. So I'm really looking forward to the people's reaction to that. It's also like there isn't really a anthology of short stories in comics forms. There's kind of anthologies in general, or even things that come out that have a bunch of different stories. But this is sort of the one-off. It's one big book. So I just think it would be very good for sort of academics who want to have a whole bunch of stories in one volume. It's also kind of just a marker of time, I would say, at this time and place in the world of comics in Canada. And they're all Canadians. Again, a whole mix of people who've never done comics before, never published a book before. And then other people like Joe Ullman, for example, is the first one, obviously very well known for being a short story writer. So we used one of his stories. So that's kind of an archival work. So there's archival stuff, there's brand new stuff, there's people who'd never made comics before, and I'm like, well, why don't you try your hand at this? And so that was all great.
That's a great milestone, I tell you, to accomplish that. Good celebration, for sure.
Yeah, so for me, I'm always, what's next? So that's a big thing that I've been working on for 5 years, obviously. So I think that will be exciting to launch. The first event will be in Montreal. The Montreal Comic Art Festival is first this year, and then also in Toronto. And then also FanCaf is back this year in July. So we'll do those 3 at least, among others. And what I'm going to do at all these events is take out an extra table or book an extra table and have one table and just invite all 25 artists, all of those events. And then whoever can show up, shows up. So they can all just be behind one table signing that anthology.
Cool.
And their individual books, of course, and the box set. So that is the hope for next year, that you'll see one table with many different people hanging out. So the first one will be Montreal, then Toronto and Vancouver, and we'll get some other stuff in there as well, I'm sure.
Very good.
The problem this year is I wanted to go to Erlangen in Germany. It's the same day as TCAF. I wanted to go to the Vancouver Art Book Fair. It's the same day as MCAF. So the problem is once you start having all these festivals and they all kind of are on the same weekend, then you have to pick something. So
that's the problem. You're so popular. That's a good thing.
So popular. Yeah.
So you've got some other books coming out in the spring.
Yeah. Well, I mean, an easy way to make the connection is there's actually 3 new books by people that are also in the anthology. So Alison McCreish, who I mentioned earlier, so she had one of the early titles in the Conundrum 25 series was a chapter from Degrees of Separation. So now that is in the anthology as well. So she has a new book coming out called The Short Years. It's kind of like a strips. It's like a Archie Digest format, and it strips about her kids, and it covers about 7 years or 10 years. So the kids are growing. It's very classic kind of newspaper comic strip style, in the sense that it's about her kids and growing, and in the poignant moments, the funny moments, the sad moments. The big thing about this one is she connected with Lynn Johnson of For Better For Worse, who provided a blurb for her. So that is amazing. So there's the connection there. So I'm so glad that Lynn likes Allison's work. So she would be part of the doubling up. I'm going to say doubling up with the anthology. Another person doubling up with the anthology is Cole Degenstein, who, as I mentioned, just won the Exposine Award for It Really Is, his Conundrum 25 book. So he has a new book, which is finished, and it's all full color, smaller book called Dear Kenneth. And it's about a trip in Japan, and he apparently did this book at a whole bunch of residencies around the world. So the Angoulême residency, and one in, I think, Spain, and one in Quebec City. So this is the result of those books. But this book is all set in Japan, so it has this kind of Japanese feel to it. And then the third person who's doubling up with the anthology is Elizabeth Beliveau, who's in Edmonton. I've published, I think, 4 books by Elizabeth already. And then she did a book called Condo Lady, which was in the series, the Conundrum 25 series. So that will be as a comic in the anthology. But then she's done a full graphic novel called Birth Story. It pretty much is what it says it is. It's the story of pregnancy and birth of her child. But it covers the whole history of art, covers postpartum experiences, specifically her own, but other people as well. And it's essentially treating giving birth for a woman as a traumatic act, because, for many people it's very traumatic. And so for her, it was. So this is kind of a documentation of that point of her life. So I think it's an important thing to talk about, but it's also like a really well done, beautiful book. So those are the 3 that are doubling up with the anthology. And then another really exciting book that we're doing is Chris W. Kim did a book called Adherent a few years ago. He's in Toronto, and that was really well received. So he has done a new book called Closing Act. So that is also at the printer, and that's being launched in March. So he will definitely be at some of these events as well, and definitely he's in Toronto, so it'll definitely be a TCAF. So Adherent was all about kind of this post-apocalyptic world, and someone trying to track down this writer in the whole process of writing. Closing Act is about another person kind of wandering. It's not a post-apocalyptic, but they get trapped in the alleys of a big city. So the entire book takes place in these alleys, and people are living in there and kind of have created their own society, these alley folk, and they make maps of the alleys and they try to sell them. People are trying to escape and can't really get out of the alleys because the alleys are moving, and more importantly, they're closing in. So by the end of the book, the alleys are getting thinner and thinner and smaller, and people are starting to panic about this. And so our narrator has to navigate this world. Adherent was very much about writing, and then this book is very much about drawing. So it's quite a substantial work, and I think it will be extremely well received.
Yeah, lots of great books there. I tell you, it's fascinating, all the different aspects that the artists are creating. So lots to look forward to this spring for sure.
Absolutely.
So with that in mind, where should people go to find out more about Conundrum Press?
Well, first of all, there's always the Conundrum Press website, which is conundrumpress.com. So any news announcements, and there's an Instagram page at Conundrum Press. So please go there, follow in the Instagram. So usually if we have any announcements and stuff, you can find it on Instagram, and I think on Threads and general social media stuff. And then, independent bookstores, and comic shops across the country. We have great relationships. In every city, there's a really supportive store or shop. So please frequent the independent bookstores and comic shops.
Very good. Well, Andy, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering, is there something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview?
I've been thinking a lot about just how people value books in general. It's very exciting to be a publisher of graphic novels at this time in history, simply because the field is kind of wide open for creativity and literature and avant-garde expressions. And there's actually it's now part of publishing industry recognizes it, whereas that was never not the case before. So somebody like Conundrum can go to an art book fair, a zine fair, a comic art fair, a Comic-Con. They're all very different. They all have very different people attending them, but I can still sell these fantastic books at all of those events. So I very much appreciate that. And it's basically just travel to get to these things. And I always enjoy meeting people. So yeah, I guess I would just say look for some of these events in whatever city you're in and just go and browse. And hopefully I'll be there and you can look at the books there, but also other amazing artists. That's where I sort of discover a lot of the people that I'm publishing now. That's where I found them. They were sort of self-publishing zines and comics and minis. And I'm like, hey, this is really great. In fact, I go through this list. Elizabeth Beliveau, she was making zines many, many years ago. Cole Degenstein making zines. And in fact, both those people I discovered at Expo Zine. It just keeps going. So if you're an artist out there, just keep making these things and going to these events.
Thanks to Andy for taking time to chat with me. Discover more about Conundrum Press and pre-order all these books at conundrumpress.com, and you can discover more on Instagram at Conundrum Press. And thank you for tuning in to the True North Country Comics podcast. I invite you to visit the True North Country Comics website to listen to even more conversations and discover more from creators on making comic books and graphic novels. I also encourage you to subscribe via the website so you'll be notified about new podcast interviews and article posts. This podcast is available wherever podcasts are enjoyed. Please like, follow, and subscribe. You can follow along True North Country Comics on most social media sites, and you're encouraged to send any and all feedback to John at truenorthcountrycomics.com. Thanks for tuning in, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2025.